9:14 a.m. This is the entity that's engaging what is ongoing targeting where I'm located. Also stalking by helicopter with the people of the state. The demon that you'll see in images, he's stalking during the 7 a.m. hour in an image. He's stalking in the path, maintaining presence, engaging in that P.O.C. with the communication device. Stalking at the Ontario Town Square, and that fake sun is in the same position it is during the 7 a.m. hour, and you're going to see that on video. You're going to compare that with the images captured. I'm reminding you about that because it's uploaded and screenshots onto the Google Drive. This is the population. He represents the entity at the same Ontario Town Square where the fake sun is 2 hours later. It's not in Florida. There's only one sun by definition. This is very exclusive and specific criminal conduct, which is demonic in nature, and the entities engage in what is obvious targeting and very highly misinformed tactics. The psychological torture, ongoing stalking. The entities engage in that specific environment, and they're also engaging in this everywhere that I'm going. And they're sharing that with multiple corrupt terrorist organizations, okay? That includes the Los Angeles Police Department. This is P.O.C. It is currently 9:15 a.m. where the entities engage in this as I'm in the midst. It's also relevant because they're monitoring on devices. So while I'm in the midst of uploading on the Ontario Wi-Fi where federal stalking is underway, this is what they were doing from 9:53 a.m. until 10:17 a.m. I'm over here, same specific environment. Again, another iteration, documentation of flying in circles incessantly over me, following me, flying in circles over me as I walk to that entrance. They flew over the Ontario Open Family Community Library as I'm walking to that entrance, and that fake sun remains over me as I walk to that entrance, stalking with the fake sun. Okay, that's the entity that's targeting in the environment and targeting with that behavioral pattern, and it is shared amongst multiple corrupt law enforcement agencies, and this is a highly misinformed tactic. Mike LORENZ is done with law enforcement, and so is everybody else. The entity that's engaging in kidnapping as well includes C. Hazelwood and Owens, who were engaged in targeting this morning with an unlawful threat. These are demons that are obsessed with my vagina. They're violent sex offenders. They are engaged in pedophilia. This is the entity that engaged in theft of my money. This is the entity that tried to engage in theft of my intellectual property while targeting me, which is also the evidence. My intellectual property is also evidence to prosecute and put in federal prison domestic terrorists. They're monitoring in real time. You're using what is audible activity in the path under a fake sun that's present into the evening, while the entity is gang stalking at this same venue after 6 p.m. using helicopters in particular. None of these angles are going to be disregarded in the pattern of conduct committed by a government that's engaging in a satanic means of surveilling someone, and none of it is going to be disregarded with regard to a prosecution. This is P.O.C. Jason Isaac Fields is going to federal prison because this is the criminal conduct that he relied on in order to falsely depict my character and stealing my money, sharing with his sex partner, this grandma-age elderly woman who stole my identity, gang stalking, targeting me with the Ontario police, who committed kidnapping together on May 29th. You'll hear all the lies that she uttered as audible activity while she's monitoring at 408 West G Street. Remember, the entity's keeping the fake sun at the same time over her apartment over my head. All right, the entity's engaging in that and is doing so pursuant to a very well-documented pattern of conduct. And the entity is already surrounded with evidence. And what do the demon-possessed and psychopathic and corrupt entity do? They engage in more of that conduct. This is very specific to who they're targeting. The psychopaths engage in what is this pattern of flying in circles around me, flying in circles over me, while the fake sun remains over in a manner that is incongruent with nature and common sense and science. This is all criminal monitoring. This is P.O.C. and this is the same Euclid Avenue. 3 hours later, the fake sun's on the same Euclid Avenue where it was rising on video while they're targeting by helicopter. These are the intellectually incompetent and psychopathic. These are murderers. These are pedophiles. These are thieves. This is public corruption exposed. And the federal government is going to remove the Ontario International Airport. The federal government is going to remove the Ontario Police Department. The federal government is going to remove the Ontario Fire Department and that police department that's engaged in criminal surveillance. So I want you to look at this. That's Ontario Fire, stalking with the government, using a jet. This is the entity, you're going to interpret this is the entity that thinks that they're defying something, making some sort of statement. Let me tell you what the statement is. They're admitting to targeting Erica Lorraine Spencer. They're admitting to being demons. They're admitting to conspiring murder of the targeted individual who was proven herself what a targeted individual is experiencing while they're being gang stalked by a population that shares presence. Wells Fargo is inside of that venue where I'm documenting the fake sun over me at Wells Fargo in the evening, and they are engaged in monitoring with the Ontario police who's flying circles over their venue. You're going to prosecute the businesses. You're going to prosecute the residences. You're going to prosecute the government. And Paul Leon is sharing in that, and this is the entity that's engaged in that. And it's a very unfortunate and publicly exposed statement of psychopaths who are not engaged in any successful defiance of what shall be federal law. But this is exposing mental illness. And these are the same ones that engaged in sex trafficking. They engaged in sex trafficking, they engaged in theft of my property, and then they thought that gang stalking was going to defame my character. And actually it's going to result in the disbanding of the Ontario Police, the removal of Paul Leon, the removal of Michael Gherkin, Alan D. Wapner, Mike LORENZ, and the gang stalkers of the Ontario International Airport and every third-party airline that shares in the murder of American citizens and targeting them in order to psychologically torture them before that murder as an entity takes place. This is speaking to what is the national security threat and the enemies of the United States. This is showing the enemies that they are. While you document and expose them, this ongoing so-called statement in defiance is speaking to enemies of the United States, domestic enemies, and they shall be removed. This is P.O.C. It is currently 9:19 a.m. The entity is not engaged in any investigation. The entity is engaged in clear targeting. The entity is engaged in a documented pattern of targeting in this manner as well. P.O.C.